Hello, and welcome to Braving Uncertainty, a peer-to-peer live stream event sponsored by Racami, the company with the products and solutions that ensure customer communication success. To learn more, please visit racami.com. Over the next 90 minutes, you'll hear from industry educator Peter Muir on how to manage unavoidable change. Then Lois Ritterossi of High Rock Strategies will lead a panel of managers from implants and service providers who will share how they're being successful in these uncertain times. We'll close with Matt Mahoney of Racami, who will share a case study of how technology helps us get more done with less. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping notes. We are recording this webinar. Everyone is on mute, so please use the question box. It's on the right-hand side of the control panel down near the bottom to ask questions or respond to questions during the webinar. We'll have several polls, and we appreciate your participation to make this a success for everyone. And lastly, the biographies of the speakers and the panelists are available as a download. So let's start to the first poll. So regarding your print and mail volumes, have they gone down over 25%, gone down over 50%, or have they actually increased or not changed? So we'd ask you to please select what most reflects what you're experiencing right now. This is great. People are voting. We're going to leave it open for 30 more seconds. This is going to be very interesting what we're seeing here from a lot of folks. 10 seconds left to vote. And we will close the poll. So now let's share those results. So you'll see that for the people who are attending and responded, about a third of those folks have seen volumes for print and mail go down over 25%, and another 22% even further have gone down 22%. Some people have seen an increase, a small 6% have seen an increase, and for 38% of you, you haven't seen any change on the poll. So that's a very interesting grouping. We've seen a lot of different change. So now to join me to speak about change is Mr. Peter Muir. So Peter Muir is the founder of training and consulting company Bizugate Inc. He has developed and delivered hundreds of face-to-face workshops, live online courses, long-term consulting projects, and keynotes to all levels of the organization. His wide breadth of knowledge and experience from many industries includes leadership consulting, mission exploration, strategy planning, sales enablement, innovation ideation, and workflow optimization. Peter has been a consulting partner of Franklin Covey's for the last 6 years. In addition to working in all 50 states, Peter is connected with audience in 37 countries around the world and is proud to be a TEDx fellow. Peter, the screen is yours.
Mark, thanks very much. Just want to make sure, am I showing the right thing? Yes?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for having me in your homes. I must admit, in the last 2 months, I've been in more homes in 2 months than I have been, I think, in my entire life. It's great to be able to share just a few minutes with you here today. And really, I just want to share some ideas to set us up for our time we spend together around leading during this unprecedented change. And considering what we're all facing right now, and you've all taken time away from your busy schedules to be here, I want to set this up like a workshop. Yeah, you thought you'd just sit here and listen to some speakers, but really I've got 2 tools I want to make sure you've got nearby. I want to make sure you've got a pen and you got a pad of paper or a notebook, someplace you can take some notes. Because as we go through today, one thing I'd like you to keep in mind is that as a workshop, I'd like you to do some work. And I'd like you to think about this 1-1-1 concept here. As we go through today, through any of the speakers that share what's going on in their lives or what they're seeing or what they're doing, I'd like you to think about one thing that you might start doing and jot that down. What could be one thing you'll stop doing? And also, what's one thing that you'll continue doing and, quite frankly, celebrate it, have a party doing it? It's just that way you start to think through. It's not just listening, it's also being active, thinking about how does this compare to what we've been doing? How does this compare to something I haven't thought of yet? That's it, this idea of a workshop. When Racami asked me to join today, it was all about this idea around leading during change. I mean, we are in the midst of the greatest change any of us have ever faced in our lives. And one person to get us thinking about that from a perspective of global leadership is General Stanley McChrystal. Just this quote gets me thinking about what we're facing and how do you deal with it. And he talked about creating a system to bring in information.
Peter, can I interrupt? You're sharing your notes page. I apologize.
I appreciate you checking that with me. I'm glad you caught that. Make sure I get the right one. Screen. How about now?
Now we just see General McChrystal.
Excellent. That's great. You see just him, and instead of seeing my notes, which of course you're like, this guy's working without any notes. But thank you very much. Appreciate it, Mark. This idea of General Stanley McChrystal thinking about what's it going to take to lead through this greatest change we've ever faced. And it's about a system about what's working and what's not. So the entire organization gets better. And it's like, do we have a system that allows us to bring that in? And especially now when we're disparate. Yes, there are some working in the plant or in the offices, but should they or are they? What about people working from home? How do we bring this together? He also talked about being absolutely straightforward and tell them the truth, even though it might change day to day, and that builds confidence for the long haul. And that right there, just this idea of being transparent. It's okay to be transparent about not sure about what's going to happen. But what would be really valuable to people in the midst of all this is the communication. We're in that business. In an omni-channel world, what can we do to communicate? And it's not just out, it's also back in. How do we communicate effectively in a way where we can understand what people are facing all the time? And that's really it. Even in the midst of this and build people's confidence, communications can do that. And when he was asked further about just dealing with a global pandemic, he mentioned the problem is big enough that it requires everybody to focus. And just the idea of everybody, not just in your organization, but think about the people who work for your organization and their families, and then the people that they interact with every day, plus your partners and plus your clients and everyone else. It's just everybody to sacrifice just a little. And that's something to set us up for the day. It's just this idea of communication around transparency, about keeping people aware of what's going on, as well as the sacrifice. I've spent the last 2 months working with different organizations about how to navigate through this. And one person in particular, Bob Mesta, he's the head of the Rewired group in Detroit. And we got talking about how helping people with a reference point. Like, how do we talk about what we're going through right now? And I wanted to share with you just a reference point. I call it the pandemic reference. But just think about these 4 different reference points. Phase 0 is before the global pandemic. Phase 1 is we're all locked in place. That's what happened, late March, early April. We're all locked in place. Phase 2 is kind of coming out, and in some places in the US and other parts of the world, we're doing that right now, kind of coming out. And phase 3 is what's that new normal or that next normal going to look like? And with these 4 reference points, I just want you to think about an example of phase 0 before the global pandemic, phase 1 locked in place, phase 2 kind of coming out, and phase 3 the new normal. I'll give you an example. Think of a hotel. Think of a hotel chain. In phase 0, it was before the pandemic. It was business as usual. But as the global pandemic set in, it was, what does phase 1 look like? We're locked in place. Many organizations, I'm amazed, they put their heads down or their heads in the ground, or they just focused on themselves, and I mean that in a more of a selfish way as opposed to thinking about the impact on others. And it could be a time when you could do some incredible testing or trying things out. Like, even though we're locked down, what could we be working on? What could we do with regard to our internal communications, maybe around our finance, around our systems? How about just helping people communicate remotely, getting ourselves set up for that? And how do we do that? In phase 2, that kind of coming out, many of us are in the midst of this right now. How do we, and thinking of a hotel chain in phase 1, they were thinking about what systems they could improve on, just things like the way they're going to care for the rooms. And in phase 2, kind of coming out, they started to leverage the restaurant, and the restaurant started to feed the local hospitals and the staff that were there. So here's a hotel thinking about feeding others. And then what's phase 3 going to look like? That kind of coming, that idea of the next normal or the new normal. We're all somewhere in these 4 phases right now. And on a particular day, you might be back in phase 1, kind of locked in. And sometimes you might be in phase 2 where we're coming out and we're trying to figure out what to do. Or phase 3, we're planning on what's going to happen in the future. And as you spend your time, not only today, but just as you go forward, think of these 4 different reference points, thinking about time, but also what are the activities that we could be doing? I mean, we'll never get back to phase 0 again before the pandemic. Phase 3 is what's coming. And all of us, you joining us today, it shows that you're interested in what could you be doing. And it's really one of the best things is about sharing with others what's working, what's not. And that's the core of what I want to share with you today is 4 strengths that you could use to navigate the change that we're facing on a regular basis. There's 4 I'm going to share with you. The first one's around empathetic perspectives. Second one's around finding struggling moments. The third is about prototyping to learn. And the last one is about negotiating trade-offs and decisions. These are 4 strengths. That is while you're in phase 1 or phase 2 and you're preparing for phase 3, these are 4 strengths that you could work on to get better at. And let me just break each one down and use these as a frame of reference internally with your teams, your organization, even with your clients and your partners. But this first one is about empathetic perspectives. And just to say the words, people are like, yeah, I'm empathetic about that. But really dig into it. You know, the working definition that's there is the capacity to understand and feel what another person has experienced from their frame of reference. I mean, we've talked about that idea of putting yourself in someone's shoes, but are you really? And if there's one thing that I've seen in some of the most successful, I could say organizations, but it really comes down to the individuals that work there, that lead there, that work with others, is their ability to be empathic, to really try and understand. There's over 120, 130 people on this call. I have no idea what you're facing right now, literally facing in the environment and space that you're in, but just what you're dealing with every day. And if we took more time to be empathic with those around us, and we could get better at that, learning to listen and listen more intentionally with the intention to understand, to create that connection, to try and understand what you're facing, it not only can help you with your clients and your potential clients, but also help you with your team and those inside. Now, I want to give one example of this. With an empathic approach, many of us have been thrown into this idea of working remotely. Many of us, not all, many have been working remotely long before this, but just a couple mindsets to keep in mind, whether you're from an individual perspective, or think of your role as a leader to try and understand empathically what others are facing. Just that idea of having space to do work. In some organizations, people are back in work, and that idea of claiming space, that space where we're working. In a home, it depends on how big your home is. Some, in the midst of all this, they are going to other locations, literally rental offices as a way to be able to have that. But claiming your space is just saying, this is where I'm going to work, and that's what this space is set aside for. And also, I mean, just a good example of minimizing distractions, just not even having the right screen showing people. I mean, something could be going on. Someone could run behind me in some homes. And here's the thing, from an empathic perspective, you can do the best you can, but you might not be prepared for what you're going to face. Mark was saying before the call started, there was a car alarm going off. I mean, there's things that can happen. You can do the best you can to minimize those things that could distract. but they could be something you still face. If you take some time to think about making tomorrow amazing while you're working remotely, whether you're leading or you're doing the work to be done, make tomorrow amazing. It's as you wrap up your day, think about what's going to do and help you be effective tomorrow. A little bit of planning. What do I want to achieve by the end of tomorrow? What am I going to put off for the next day? Just taking some time to do that and can help you not only help yourself, but also help those around you, especially from a stay connected standpoint. You know, working remotely, staying connected with the people that matter most in your team, in your family, whether it's face-to-face, whether it's over the web with a video, or it's on the phone. I've even seen an uptick. People are writing letters again. You're actually seeing some of that. Staying connected is a good thing. And then the last one is just the idea of taking breaks. Literally getting up and walking around, whether you got a standing desk or something, get out, get outside, do something, but do it in a way where you are being both respectful and practicing safe distancing. I share with you these 5 examples of working remotely. A partner of mine wrote an article about this idea of working remotely and how do you do it effectively. But I put this in this section of empathy, where we need to practice empathy, trying to understand what people face. Just think about what it's like. I mean, people are like, yeah, I have no problem, I've got space. What if you live in a home with 3 people and it's a very small home and there is no private room? Like it's just like, just be aware of it. That's really when it comes from an empathic standpoint. If we're looking for things that we can do to strengthen ourselves as individuals, leaders, teams, and organizations, practicing empathy can go a long way. It'd be a valuable strength to help each of us get better as we emerge from this. The second of those 4 strengths that I wanted to share with you is around finding struggling moments. Bob Mesta said that the struggling moment is the seed of innovation. It literally is like a seed that could grow, but you have to take the time to understand where are people struggling. And by the way, you could use this for yourself in your day-to-day. You could use this inside your organization, the plant, the shop. You could also use this with your clients and help your clients see this. But everyone's struggling in some way. And this was before, back in phase 0, everyone was struggling as well. But do we take the time to understand what the struggle looks like? And I want to give you a tool. This is called Forces of Progress, and this is something that Bob uses to get you to think through what a struggling moment looks like and how to frame it up. If you look on this graphic I have, there's the old way, kind of the way things were going, say phase 0 before the pandemic, and over on the right is the new way. And there's some kind of concept of change. I mean, we're all going through the greatest change we've ever faced. There are these 4 forces of progress I want to give you to help you understand what you could face. There are things that push you away from the old situation and move you to the new thing. A global pandemic is a pretty good example of a push, but there's also things that pull, that there are things that you want about the new solution. And that could be something like learning to be effective at working remotely, managing your team. How do we market more effectively in the midst of this? There's pushes and pulls that move us to the new thing, but there's also things that hold us back. There's anxieties, and there are more anxieties coming out now than ever before, and that practicing the empathy can help with that. But there's also habits, just the way things were done before. And it's amazing how some habits are being crushed and other habits people are holding on tightly. And I won't say the word being left behind so much as just they're not safe when you think about that. In the midst of all this, what I want you to notice right there in the middle is a struggling moment. There are things that push and pull you to the new thing. There's things that hold you back, and you're in the middle of all that. And if it's not you, it could be your client, it could be one of your employees. We're all facing struggles. And what you can tell from these 4 things is that you could frame up a better understanding of where people struggle. And another thing to share with you is this idea of a job to be done. In the world of innovation, which is very busy right now, they take that idea of a struggling moment and they frame it up in a way where you can understand it better, unpack it. And this thing called a job to be done is about the progress that an individual is trying to make in a particular circumstance to achieve some kind of outcome. I've got a very simple graphic to help you understand what that looks like. Here on the left, this is the current where you are, and over on the right is something new. Before the global pandemic, it'd be a new service, a new product, a new line of business, maybe a new partner that you could go with. That's the outcome on the other side, but in the middle is probably one of the most interesting things to study when you understand where people struggle. It's called progress. Understanding, what does progress mean to different people? Does it mean something faster? Does it mean something more complete? You know, what does that look like? And it means different things to different people. What I'm getting at is you actually have to take some time through that empathy to listen and listen for clues of opportunity. And if we focus more about the process of what do people do to make progress, to go from where they are in the current circumstances, the progress piece to get to the other side, if you focused on that, you could get new clues of where you may want to spend your time. Maybe there's a new service you could, or something to be improved. You know, find out why people make the choices that they make. This is a really great time to unpack the why behind the what. You know, understanding why people do what they do. You can use this internally just to improve your own processes, your own workflows as a way to do that. And the last one is something like understanding what the circumstance, that part on the left-hand side of this graphic, where if what's in most databases is not the circumstance information. What's in them is capabilities, what things can do, but it doesn't have the circumstance information. And I want to give you one example. Right now, with your pad of paper and your pen, I would like you to write down 3 or 4 reasons why you upgraded to the current phone that you have. Right now, I want you to jot down 3 or 4 reasons why you upgraded to your current cell phone. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to do that. Think of 4 reasons why you upgraded to your current cell phone. All right. If you look through that list, what you'll find is the majority of those reasons are functional, what the thing does. But do you know if we understood these struggling moments that people are facing, there's an emotional impact and a social impact. How does it feel when your phone's the one that is always out of juice, out of battery power? Oh, I have to walk in a room and look around for plugs. Like, there's an emotional impact to that. That's part of the struggles that we face. What's it like when someone looks over your shoulder and sees you have a cracked screen? Like, there's a social impact on where we struggle. The outcome of this idea of finding struggling moments and practicing empathy is that if we took more time to find out what causes people to do what they do, it could help, especially in a world where we focus a lot on data and getting the data right. Correlation is about kind of correlating the data and trying marketing to a particular group. How old I am, how much money I make, how aggressively I want to invest, and when I want to retire. You can correlate data and figure out who might be likely to sign up for that 401k or that investment company. But if you go for the causality, what causes people to say, today is the day I'm going to let go of my current investment company and I'm going to choose another? Today's the day that I'm going to switch electric utility providers. Like, if we got more into that, it could mean some really great outcome. And Ted Levitt said it well when it comes to causality. People don't want to buy a 1/4-inch drill, they want a 1/4-inch hole. Think about that quote for a moment. If we get more curious about the why people, like, why does somebody want a hole? It's not about the drill and how big the battery is and how fast it goes. Maybe somebody might subcontract out and drill the hole to put the cabinet on the wall. Like, if we get more curious about why people do things, there could be incredible clues to help us emerge from this in a way where we're better tooled and ready for it. And one of the things we can do during phase 1, when we're in lockdown, or phase 2, and as well as in phase 2, kind of coming out, is prototyping. Prototyping is really powerful. It's about testing things out, seeing what works. The fact that all of you are on this call today, Racami wanted to be able to test out communicating with you in a way where let's try and provide some information to help you make better decisions and connect with us. I love this graphic. I think it's really neat. It gets you thinking about, so often when we prototype, people prototype to verify. They make examples. So example, here's the wheels, and then the chassis, and then the body, and then, oh, we didn't want the car. But if we prototype to learn, like if we really do practice things and try things out, what you'll find is, oh, it's not a skateboard, it's not a scooter, maybe it's a bike, could be a motorcycle. But in the end, we didn't need a car, we needed that. if we prototype to learn, if we create examples, if we test out new products, if we improve a process, the point is, if we try it now, you'll get so much more if you prototype to learn as opposed to just verify like, yup, it works, or no, it doesn't. The one thing about prototyping I have to share with you is that there's one big thing that comes out when you prototype, that you have to do the work. No, you really have to do the work. No, you've got to do the work. Some of the incredible people that are going to be on the panel later are going to share with you what the work they've been doing. And they haven't been in phase one with their head stuck in the ground. It's about doing things that help people be more effective. And then the last skill I want to share with you is about negotiating trade-offs and decisions. Whenever we start doing something new or trying something different, there are always trade-offs when we make a decision. I love this graphic. I mean, how many of you in the midst of all of this, you might be sitting longer than you ever have. You might have access to the refrigerator more. I mean, you got the apple on the one side, the donut on the other. There's always trade-offs. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's better to eat the apple or the donut, or the donut's more joy. It's the point is, remember those struggling moments I talked about earlier? Find those struggling moments. People make trade-offs every day. They're willing to let go of something for something else. And it's the better we understand that, it helps us prototype, it helps us find those struggling moments, it helps us be empathic. And I love this. David Heinemeier Hansen, he's creator of Ruby Rails, he's Basecamp. This idea of the outcome of this is you're better off with a kick-ass half than a half-assed whole. And the only way that works is if you decide to make trade-offs and decisions and you do the prototypes. We make trade-offs all the time. I love this picture. Here's a kid, he's deciding like, which one am I going to play with today? We have to let go of something so we can then embrace something else. Well, guess what? Other people are facing the same struggles. What are people going to let go of so they can embrace something new? I know for a fact that I wait in line at a big box, or at a home improvement store. I wait in line to get in now. And I'm willing to make that trade-off because I want to get in there. And I'm also happy that they're creating a space where I feel safer. What are some of the trade-offs you can do to get a better outcome? Some of you may know SNHU, Southern New Hampshire University. They're in New Hampshire. And for quite a few years in our industry, in printing and variable data and marketing, they focused on really identifying not just students who are in high school, but also adult learners. And they've gotten really good at going after helping people be educated all around the world in all walks of life, whether you want to come to our campus or you want to learn online. And the reason I'm bringing them up is they're learning how to make trade-offs. They're trying to figure out right now of how to bring their campus tuition to $10,000 by 2021. Yes, they're trying to figure that out right now because it's just something that they're trying to decide. What am I going to trade off, and what am I going to do to prototype to try and learn and get better at this? And that's one challenge they're figuring out right now. And it could be in their processes, it could be in their services, it could be just in looking at what do we need to continue to fund and what do we stop funding over here. There was an organization, just one more I want to share with you, that was, they focused on linking college students and high school kids with older people who needed something done around the yard or around the house. And it was like a $20 helper. And they had this great app that linked people who needed something done to people who could do the work. The only problem is the global pandemic hit. They realized, oh, I can't do that anymore. So what they figured out was they just, in sitting around a table one day, a virtual table like this, they came up with this idea of a new app called The Bread. No kidding, it's bread when you want it. So it allows you to get authentic, delicious Chilean bread delivered right to your door. What's wild is they came up with a way to get people to cook the breads, bake the breads at home. They linked it up with drivers who could then deliver it to the people who wanted the bread in 30 minutes or less. It was incredible, but the point I'm bringing it up to you is it's this idea of they wanted to be empathic about what people were facing. They wanted to, and they couldn't do the usual work they're doing, which is linking kids to work to be done by older folks. But they look for those struggling moments that people were facing, like just trying to get fresh bread, and they came up with an approach like this. They did the prototyping, they learned, and they made trade-offs and decisions. Ladies and gentlemen, we're facing so much. and just trying to share some strengths that you could work on improving. Being more empathic and understanding what people face. Find their struggling moments. What's pushing and pulling people to the new thing, but also what's the anxiety and the habits that are holding them back. This is a great time to be prototyping and try new things. And lastly, this idea of negotiating trade-offs. What do we have to let go of so we can embrace something else? I was trying to think of some ideas to help you as you move forward in the rest of the call that we're going to have today, as well as moving forward in your day-to-day. And the TED Radio Hour, they bring together some incredible ideas, and I've taken some of them and modified them. But the idea of, as we move forward, what we value is changing. I mean, you as within the business that you're in, the role that you're in, but also the world beyond that, your organization, our industries, the people that we help and that we service. What we value is changing, and we got to reevaluate what we have. It's a really good time to do that. And you'll find that some of the most successful organizations are looking at valuing people more. And that could be, that comes in so many different ways. And to focus on the community, and the community could be around your area, but it could be a community as an industry. Just the fact that what Racami is doing today is wanting to be able to share some ideas to help you as you navigate through this. And that new shape of progress is about being more humane, a sweet spot for humanity. And we do need each other. We need each other every day to be able to move forward. Not just clients and employees, but we need people to want to work together, and we're going to need to sacrifice. And the last thing I'll share with you is this idea of causality. We might think we know why people do things, but boy, we are going to be facing totally new processes, services, and products and needs. And we really need to focus on why people do what they do. Look towards causality, take some time, interview people, get to know them, watch them, ask questions, be curious. You'd be surprised at what you could get at the back end of a workout like this. As you go through the rest of the call today, I really do want you to think about what's one thing you could start doing, what's one thing you could stop doing, one thing you'll continue and celebrate doing. One thing to kind of get you thinking as maybe a start is look at what Racami has done for you today. They've taken some time to create this environment where you have some ideas to learn from, not just from people like me, but other people like you that are practicing it every day. So I challenge you, think about what have you done for your clients, your prospects, your employees, like Racami has done for you today. And I thank you very much for the time you spend. And Mark, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Peter, thank you. Do you have time to just respond to, we did have one question, and it was actually more of a comment, and it was from Mike McGuire, and he said, the jobs, you were talking about why you choose something, yeah. And he turned that into what's the job to be done, and refers to Clayton Christensen's Competing Against Luck. Okay, you like that? And yes. The question was, what's the job of a vanilla workshake?
Oh gosh, he's playing with the rest of us on this call. It's fantastic.
Okay.
Just a quick note, Clayton Christensen was one of the most sought after minds in innovation. He and Bob Mesta, the other gentleman I mentioned, they're friends for 25 years. And what they were trying to do was help people get better at innovation. I've given you some clues into some of this, but one of the biggest things in the midst of this pandemic, some of the best innovations, just look at what we're doing right now. There are some people that didn't have voice over IP, they didn't have cameras. We're doing more innovative things now than ever before. So to keep up the effort, it's fantastic. Thanks, Mike. We can chat offline about it some more. Thanks, Mark.
Okay, great. Peter, thank you very much. I really appreciate all that you shared. And now I'd like to bring on Lois Ritterossi. Lois is the president of High Rock Strategies, an independent management consulting firm that's focused on sales and marketing strategies for firms in the print, mail, and communication sectors. Lois has over 25 years experience in sales and marketing with disciplines in business strategy, sales process, sales training, software implementation, inkjet transformation, which is of course probably the biggest thing going on in industry, and workflow optimization. Hi, Lois.
Hi, Mark. Thank you.
Would you mind? I'd like to just share another poll real quickly to re-engage our audience.
Sure, let's hear from them.
The poll this time is, where are you regarding your staff? So are you understaffed because people have quit or are frequently calling in sick? You're overstaffed because of the volume of work has declined, or is your staffing meeting the current needs? And people are responding very quickly. So we're going to keep this poll open for 1 minute.
I'm curious to see what the attendees have to share about what's going on in their organizations.
So 20 more seconds on the poll. Remember, this is all anonymous, so no one's seeing your answer other than you. We have 9 more seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. And so we will close the poll and now share those results. And you'll see that only 11% are understaffed because of shortages, people being sick or quitting. 22% are overstaffed because of decline. And 2/3 of you're saying your staffing is meeting your current needs. So we're seeing that challenges continue to abide, but we're learning how managers are facing those challenges. So now, Lois, I'd like to turn it over to you and your panel on what they're learning and how they're facing the challenges. The screen is yours.
Thank you, Mark. We've put together a panel of leaders, both from the print service provider side, as well as people running in-plant operations. Each of them are going to share their experience as they manage and respond to changing customer needs and how they're evolving their organizations to be stronger in the future. Our panelists include Danelle Clark, who is the print operations manager at American Family Insurance, a $10 billion property and casualty firm. Mike Lincoln, the Colorado state printer. Mike runs the in-plant operation serving state agencies and municipalities. Dina Kessler, who is the Chief Operations Officer at Kessler Creative, a full-service direct marketing firm that has received several awards for innovation in direct mail. And Pamela Visconti, the Senior Director of Customer Communications at Conduent, a large BPO service provider. Thanks everyone for your participation today. Okay, to get our panel started, we're going to start on the in-plant side, and we're going to start with Mike Lincoln and Danelle Clark. So I have a couple questions for you. So, Mike, can you share some of the challenges facing you and your organization as you have responded to changing business needs resulting from the COVID situation?
Sure. The problems are just multiplying on a daily basis virtually. Really, some of the challenges have been around keeping the staff engaged. There's been a lot of concern with the staff, especially because we are considered business critical. In the rest of the world, we're essential, but in state terms, we're business critical. We support a multitude of agencies that support the public. We print things for human services, so food assistance, housing assistance, etc. We also handle the mailing for unemployment claims. So our volumes have really skyrocketed in the transactional space. And then the traditional printing side has really plummeted. I'd say, things like business cards and brochures and booklets, probably down 80, 90%. But the transactional volume is up 30, 40, and 50%, and sometimes more. So it really depends on the particular customer that we're servicing. So the challenges have been around how do we keep the staff engaged, because those transactional items that we print, we have regulatory issues and we still have to meet SLAs. Things have to get out the door. And then when you've got staff who may have family members who are, maybe at risk from a health standpoint, really don't want their, loved ones going to work, yet we need them here. That's been a challenge for us. And then from a budgetary standpoint, things are getting crazy in the public sector. So, the challenges are many, and we're trying to keep our head above water.
Great, thanks, Mike. So Danelle, you print applications that are probably significantly different than the types of thing that Mike has to print in serving the state agencies and municipalities. What are some of the challenges you have faced in serving your policyholders and your customers?
Actually, our print volumes have pretty much doubled since this started. Because claims are down, people are in their homes, people are driving less. So American Family chose to give that savings back to the customer by providing a check for auto owners. The last month was an increase of 4.2 million that we put out within 2 weeks. Significant increase, and we're doing that. That project was done by a team all remotely. I mean, we were thrown into working remotely in a day, and within 2 weeks, this project came about. You know, there's people having to learn the gap of learning the technology of virtual meetings, and there's a big gap of knowledge with all of that. So it's definitely a challenge to get that project off the ground and get everybody communicating. Typically, a project like that would take us 4 to 6 months, and it was done from start to finish in 4 weeks. So it's pretty incredible to see that while we faced many challenges in learning how to bridge that gap in the communication, the end result was pretty phenomenal to see what we were able to accomplish.
That's a great success. So Mike, as you're dealing with staffing and keeping them engaged and being an essential worker, and Danelle having a huge increase in volume due to strategic business decisions to support customers. Can you share what are some operational changes that you've made that you will continue to use that you've seen as a benefit to your operation or as a benefit to serving your customers?
Well, from the state standpoint, the work from home model for all of our administrative staff is probably something we're going to stay with. Our governor has expressed interest in keeping a large majority of the state workforce working from home. There was always that fear that maybe letting people work from home, they weren't going to be as productive as they could be if they were on site. But I think a lot of those fears have been dismissed. We're finding productivity is equal to, if not more than it was when they were in the office. I've talked to many staff that say that they're working more hours just because they get going early and take a small break. Peter was talking about that earlier. People take breaks and take a breather and get back to it. And we're seeing the business evolve, I think, from that standpoint. The problem that we also see is some of the production staff, a little jealous of that, but we're working through those challenges. Going forward, I think we've found new ways to leverage our transactional space. In offices that we support across the state, you have administrative staff who traditionally may have printed 100 letters and stuffed them themselves, then sent them to us to mail. Well, we're looking at ways we can leverage some of the technology that we have so we can automate that process so they don't have to do the hand stuffing anymore. They don't have to be printing on their MFDs. They can send it to the print center. We can consolidate those small jobs into larger jobs and then automate that process and leverage what we do for the state and bring some efficiencies. So I can see that being a mainstay as we move forward. I would imagine a lot of those staff are going to be staying from home. Well, they don't have the resources or the ability to get that into our mail streams. So I can see that being a lasting thing on our side.
Well, I'm glad to hear that technology is allowing people to be productive from home. Danelle, can you share with us some operational changes you've made that are new procedures that you think you'll keep in place?
What Mike said is a lot of what's happening for us. 99% of our people are working from home. They're just the essential workers. The production operations are the only ones on site. I do see that continuing. I mean, there will be a portion of essential workers that will be allowed to come back into the office, but I definitely see the company seeing how effectively we're still able to serve our customers, and we've lost nothing on that working remotely. So big cost savings there too, building costs and leases and all of that. We have implemented some procedures in the operations environment. Our operators do wear masks now. Their workstations are now at least 6 feet apart. We used to have shifts that overlapped, and they no longer overlap, so we lessen, the contact with people, and we see that continuing.
Great. Danelle, I'm sure that you had extensive disaster recovery and business continuity plans so that you can meet the needs of your customers. How helpful were those plans in responding to an epidemic that maybe was not something that people would have considered to take into account in putting together disaster recovery and business continuity?
I think that what we learned is that our disaster recovery is probably not as strong as we had hoped it was. We have 2 facilities and they mirror each other, but they're both in Madison, Wisconsin. So they're both in the same location. They're both for American families. So we went through the question of, what if our operations have to shut down? Like, what if? Like, what are we going to do? We have no options. There's nobody that we can just quickly send our jobs to. We have some pretty complicated jobs. It would take a lot of testing and a lot of reconfiguration to just send those off to a third party on a whim. So we've identified that we definitely need to invest some time in looking at a third party, in the case of a pandemic.
Got it. Thank you. Thank both of you for sharing. I'm going to ask a few questions of Pam and Dina, and then I'm going to bring all of you back at the end for a couple more questions. Thanks for your input. So you've heard from Mike and Danelle about some of the challenges and some of their responses in their organization. Pam and Dina are on the service provider side, and I have a couple of questions for you. So Pam, can you share what changes have you made in response to your customers and your employees in the large volume transactional printing that you do to support customers on a global basis?
So we spent a lot of time obviously planning for what may happen. Communication is definitely key, and not just weekly staff meetings, but daily communications and prepping for what may occur. So from an employee standpoint, I think that was the very key for us. Also, from a physical standpoint, separating our employees, and then communicating what we're doing with our clients. They're concerned for our staff, then delivering for them on a day-to-day basis, meeting SLAs was really, really critical to our success and continued success. I can't stress that enough, that the day-to-day communication between each team is so critical. And obviously pushing everybody from, as much as possible to a remote workforce. So, pulling the support staff out of the site was definitely a huge change for our employees. And I think it was, mentioned a little bit earlier, the change in that support and now being able to communicate to the implant and making sure that that's happening on a regular basis. So obviously just, having those day-to-day touch points with the clients, it was, again, planning for what we didn't know what was going to happen, but also talking about very critical programs. If and when we had to move, how would we move their jobs? It was funny that we discussed a little bit earlier, BCP and DR are very different in this environment. So if you had to choose a critical path and a critical job, which ones would those be, so we could stack rank what we're producing for each customer first?
Thank you. So Dina, in the direct marketing world, where some people are seeing huge volumes of decrease in marketing mail, and I know you work very closely with your clients on creative solutions to help them grow their business. So can you share with us some of the changes you've made to assist your customers in being effective and responsive during the COVID situation?
Sure. So for us, when things started to unfold in the US, it was more a matter of understanding, our goal was we want to protect our staff, we want to keep them healthy and safe while meeting our clients' needs. But we really had to go out and understand what that meant. We serve a variety of clients from different industries. So before stay-at-home orders started to be issued, it was regular conversations, communicating with our clients to say, if stay-at-home orders happen, what does that happen for you? Do you have to shut down? Are you able to send your team to work remotely? What does it look like? And how can we help you during this time? There's a lot of companies that went out and outright said, we're going dark in our marketing. Well, marketing serves like a variety of forms, right? So it's not just about promoting our product, it's also about, I'm here for my customers. So if I'm a restaurant and I go dark in my marketing, but yet I've turned my operation to takeout orders. I'm still here for my clients, so I have to let them know that. So those are individual conversations we started having with our customers to say, what is it you need from us? How can we help you during these times? What do you need us to do? Do you need takeout menus in exchange for your regular menus? You know, do you need to send a message out there, whether it's digital or mail, to let people know, hey, we're going to be here. We're going to be doing takeout orders. Here will be the process to order that. And so once we understood all that from clients, we were able to then internally say, okay, here's what we need to do as our operation. Obviously, again, focused around our team because we needed them healthy and safe. So we put into all the practices we needed to based on CDC guidelines out there, the mask, wearing masks in house. We do daily shift meetings. We do daily production meetings. They're large groups. They're within, you know, close quarters. So we had to shift some of that to say, okay, everybody stay at your desk. We're going to be, you know, calling in. We'll do webinars instead to talk about production meetings. We have a weekly staff meeting. We took that from inside to outside. We're blessed. We're in Florida, so the weather's great. So now everybody's spread out outside and we're still having communication because we have to share with the team the same thing. What's the message? What do they need to know? You know, if you are sick, if you have symptoms, where do you go? What do you do? So for us, it was a matter of like, not just our clients, but our team and everything we needed to do in between to keep them safe. Wow,
thanks. That's insightful. Pam, can you share what tools have been most useful in managing change and why? So it's sort of in managing all the things that were different for your staff, both those running equipment and those who could work remotely. What types of tools helped you manage change, and what's been your perspective on change management?
So definitely from a technology standpoint, all of our workflow management tools critical to how we're pushing work to our different locations, our BCP sites. So I would say, top of the order, definitely that they worked very well and allowed us to move volumes to each of our locations when needed. Also from a client standpoint, them being able to see what we're moving, how is it producing in that particular site, giving them a more singular view through our multiple locations. From a communication standpoint, we use Teams and it's so valuable for us. We can't talk face to face and have that contact with our employees or even our customers like we used to. So having that tool and being able to video chat and then send out messaging has been really key for us.
That's great. So Dina, can you share tools that have allowed you guys to be successful in managing change and what's been the impact of them?
Definitely. So same as Pam, like our MIS system was really huge for us. We're always able to get a glimpse into exactly what's going on in the operation, which pieces of equipment are slower than others, how do we shift team members. But also for us, it was two other forms, storefronts. So during this time while marketing mail is declining, we were able to turn around and say, well, signage is growing and everybody needs it. And so we were able to build storefronts from COVID signs that people would need in bulk, as well as a lot of graduations getting canceled out there, a lot of sad kids. So graduation signs were a big hit, celebration signs, anything like that. And having the storefront where obviously less team members having to man that, and just the orders coming in offline streamlined the process and made things very simple for us. And for us, it's been something we've been focused on since last year. How do we automate as much as we can? So as a smaller company, the more we can automate, the better for our team, the more that the team can do and navigate through in a day. So we have a team that actually meets on a regular basis to work on automating all processes. They'll take, even down to our inkjet process. Okay, what are we currently doing on inkjet that we can automate and make it more simple for the team members and get things out the door quicker?
Great.
Yeah, I agree with on the automation. Definitely a key point. Making sure that we're automating every single point that we possibly can in the process and eliminating as much touch.
That's great. So, Peter shared about innovation and prototyping, and I know you both have diverse and talented staff that have lots of functions they do on a daily basis. Can you share any innovative things that were kind of bottom up, that once you sort of put the challenge to your staff and your teams, ideas that came from them that you were able to adopt and be able to use?
We had a project in place. It's for our inbound mailroom. So we had, already starting to move hyperscience and moving more automation, machine learning there. So that actually took a, huge leap forward with all of this. So not a new idea, but definitely an accelerated idea in our business, taking the forefront to automate as much as possible in that area. A lot of touch in the inbound mail rooms.
Mm-hmm.
We had a similar thing. So we had a team come together over multiple jobs. So if things are not exactly the same, but they're similar, and they were able to take, say, real estate agents, right? There's great mail out there for real estate agents, but it's not always in larger volumes. So how do we make that come through the system more efficiently and less touches? Same thing. And they were able to take like jobs, and we gang them from pre-press, from list processing, all the way through the system out the door to the post office. So a little bit of downtime during COVID times has helped give them the time to actually do that, which has been awesome.
So have any of you considered changing processes around how to incent people for innovation or creative brainstorming, so that you've seen sort of had the time to stop and think, and giving your teams the time to do that? Is that some process that you'll change and think about going forward?
Love that.
I'll challenge you to consider making that a process. I'd like to bring back Mike and Danelle, and I have a question for all four panelists that we'd like to chat a little further about, because I think you'll all have some interesting perspective. So I'm sure all of you went through strategic planning and budgeting at some point during third and fourth quarter or at the beginning of the year, and 2020 looked pretty different in January than it did in March and April. So I'd like to hear from some of you, and let's start with Danelle. What has changed in terms of your plans for investment in technology and equipment? Here we are now, it's May, versus what you thought the organization was planning to do in January, and how you guys are now looking at in your investment strategy around your print operation for the balance of 2020.
I have to say that we were pretty well equipped for this. We started a project in 2015 to upgrade all of our equipment, implement new software for the print management. So when this all hit, our capacity is actually greater than it was with less pieces of equipment. So 2020 was a year that we actually didn't plan on investing in anything more, because we had just laid our framework. So for us, it like worked out perfect that we were definitely ahead of the game for this one.
That's wonderful. So Pam, you're responsible at Conduent for a very large operation, multiple print mail locations and global clients. Can you give us some insight in terms of what your investment strategy was around equipment and technology, and how maybe that's changed?
Yeah, we had, we did have to reevaluate our projects, which are key projects. There are, some as far as equipment that we were planning on doing, and we've still moved forward with, really gaining the efficiencies, and some of those upgrades are really important. The same with automation. There were some projects that were already underway that really we needed to complete so that we could gain the efficiencies that we really need right now in this environment. Cuts down on our costs, but also pushes through more work, in a more automated fashion and with less equipment.
I'm sure your partners would be very happy to hear that you're moving forward with those investments.
Yes, I'm sure they are.
So Mike, you have the challenge of now having increased volumes due to the nature of some of the work that you do, and challenges with employees who maybe were able to do things in their office that they can't now. So what's changed in terms of your investment outlook in supporting your operation?
Well, very similar to my colleagues here, we've got some investments that just have to move forward from a production standpoint in order to gain some efficiencies and reduce downtime on some of the aging equipment. We just have to move forward. There's no opportunity to say we're not going to do that. And then some other areas, there were some things that from my perspective, we needed to have, which are now being reevaluated into, it'd be nice to have it, but we can probably survive without. We're looking at 10 to 20% budget cuts in the next fiscal year, which starts in July. And so we're all being asked, state agencies, to find ways we can trim those costs. And so we are making some strategic decisions to move forward in the areas that we have to. And then other areas, we may have to put them on hold for 18 to 24 months. It's not ideal, but it's the reality that we have to exist in today.
Yep. And Dina, give us your perspective from the marketing side and sort of the commercial print and the wide format side. The nature of some of your applications is different than everybody else on the panel. What is your perspective on planned investment versus what you may do now?
So the interesting part for us was right in the midst of COVID, we had already signed to bring in another inkjet technology printer. And so during it, it was being installed. So it was more at that time about, I need to keep my team safe. How do I keep them safe while I have more people in the building I really didn't want to? Luckily, our vendor was willing to work with us about outside hours to minimize how many people were in the building. And I have to say, we're absolutely not sorry that we moved forward with that, because for us, it's the same. It's the inkjet technology, the ability to get more out quicker with variable processing for advertising is awesome. So it's been a great decision. Our other piece to that is technology. We've been on the hunt for over a year. What we wanted to do was to add more value to our marketing campaigns for our customers, all enhanced around the mail. And we've been studying platforms for the last year and found one that we absolutely loved. And so the perfect time for us to move forward actually was during it, because we had time to say, okay, now we can understand this platform so that we can prepare our sales force to be able to sell it and share it with our clients.
Yeah, it's nothing like having more time to do a system integration without the whole shop being crazy, right?
Exactly. It was perfect timing.
Good for you. Well, I'd like to ask the panelists an opportunity of, we have about 102 attendees out there that are listening intently to all of the information that you're sharing. And I know that Dina, you had mentioned a question when we were on our pre-call. What is a question you'd like to ask of the panelists? And for all of you, excuse me, a question for the attendees. For all of you who are out there as attendees, Mark had referenced, please use the question box in your control panel, and we'd love to hear some responses from the group out there. Dina, what was your most interesting marketing question?
It's about marketing. So during the time of COVID, all the marketing messages that you heard out there, were there any that stood out to you that were an excellent use of marketing during this time? And were there any that you felt in the same light that would have been in bad taste?
Great. So we'd love to hear from the attendees who are listening in. So of all the marketing messages out there, what resonated with you that was helpful and informative, or you took action on, and what was maybe something in bad taste? And we'd love if you guys would respond in the questions panel. Mark, do we have any other questions for the panelists?
So there is one response. One person mentioned that they just received a direct mail piece for a cruise ship, so that they felt was inappropriate. But I'm actually seeing a lot more and actually well done direct mail from nonprofits at this time. I didn't know if other of the panelists have seen that as well.
I personally have several nonprofits that are charities that I send checks to regularly, and I have seen some really timely, appropriate marketing messages about why they still need donations and what they're doing that's relevant to the crisis and beyond the crisis as it impacts their organization. So I would concur, some of the nonprofits and charities have been highly effective in providing relevant messages. Pam, Mike, or Danelle, do you have any questions of our attendees out there? We're seeing some great responses come in. Mark, if you want to share some.
Sure. So, Mike Porter shared that Pep Boys have started a series about how to care for your car while it's just sitting in the garage. And Kathy Rupert has been talking about what she's seeing on commercials. I don't know how many of you have seen, the Postal Service actually has a great commercial out there right now about how they are there for the United States and for all of us at this time.
Yeah, I would agree that the USPS commercial is really excellent. Excuse me. Well, we would like to thank all the panelists, and we would move on to the next portion of our webinar. Mark?
Lois, thank you, and thank you, Danelle, Michael, Dina, and Pamela. We really appreciate you sharing your experiences and your expertise. Next, I want to introduce Matt Mahoney. Matt is the Executive Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Racami, and they're the sponsor of this event. And Matt is going to show us proof that technology helps us get more done with less. Matt, the screen is yours.
All right, thank you, Mark. Welcome, everybody. This has been pretty amazing so far, I think. Hopefully you're enjoying the content from the more philosophical side with Peter and some of the real world information from in the trenches with the panelists. So what I'm going to go into now is a case study very specific about a company that applied technology, and I used to call this, I've been doing this presentation now for about a year, a new customer of ours, and a very, very specific case study on how they use technology. And we've talked a lot today about communication, about communications, and the collaboration between a vendor, their customer, and their customer's customer. So there's really three parties involved in this. And I'm retitling this because I used to call it, oops, sorry about that. I used to call it How to Land a Whale. But it's really a story about applying the right technology and collaboration between companies so that they could get more done with less. So it's really, really relevant here. And this caught my attention a couple days ago. I was on a webinar where about 10 companies were talking about COVID, sort of like we're doing here. And there was this casual conversation for about an hour, and they were talking about, the different issues that have come up. And one of the things that really surprised me is the issue of staffing. Because in my mind, I think, well, the economy is down, people are not, as productive. There aren't as many communications going out. As Dina said, marketing mail is down, but the transaction mail is still holding on pretty strong. And so the staffing discussion came up, and I was very surprised at the human resource challenge. I don't know why I was surprised, but I was, to the level that it is. So one of the companies on this webinar said that 100 people call in sick daily. It's a larger organization, multi-site operation. They have a large number of employees, but that's something that I just didn't really think about, that 100 people would call in sick daily. And what do you do? Some of those people are critical to getting work out the door. And how do you backfill them and make sure that the work can get out? Another company said that 15 people quit in one day. So early on, when this started to take off, people were scared, right? They still are scared. And so they had 15 people quit in a day. They're down, I think, right now 20 people. So they're looking to hire for 20 spots. Some other companies mentioned that they're short developers. So their IT staff is shorthanded. And there was a comment about FMLA and the legal issues that are coming up here with, maybe you want to send somebody to your customer site to work on a printer, or you want to send them to a trade show or something. Well, what happens if they go there and they get sick? Are there legal ramifications for the company that they have to deal with? And so this is going to lead into this case study in a little bit different way than I normally do. Normally I talk about the success of this service bureau who landed a whale of an account, a multi-million-dollar account, how they did it. From that perspective, I'm just twisting it a little bit so it's more about the scalability of your business. I think this is more relevant today, that you need to be able to get more done with less. You heard Mike Lincoln talk earlier that their budgets are cut by 20%. So depending on the industry that you're in, you may have various issues to deal with. And so technology, if you're a believer that technology can make you more efficient and able to get things done with less, then you'll like this story here. So this is sort of proof for that. You see that at the bottom there, there's a 5% increase in headcount to handle a 60% growth in total mail volume. So this customer of ours was able to land an account that increased their mail volume by 60% with the number of jobs being managed, and that's significant too, right? The sheer number of jobs that you have to have job tickets for and specifications for and manage the schedules on all of these things. So it's not just the mail volume, but the number of jobs increased. And one thing you don't see on screen here is the percentage of investment. So I don't know exactly what they invested in terms of money to win this multi-million-dollar account, but it was probably, if I was going to take a guess, I know what they spent on our software. Let's just say it was 20% of the revenue they were getting from this customer. After that initial investment, they could leverage that for other customers and other efficiencies in the business. So year over year, they're not spending that 20%. And that's what we all want, right? Is the scalability in the business where your cost line stays pretty low and you can ramp up the revenues really fast. And so this is an example, this case study of that scalability that can be achieved. So it started out with an RFP that was issued by an insurance company, and we found out about it because we started getting phone calls. So I was actually in our Atlanta office, and the phone was ringing, and they're asking for information about Racami. So 5 companies called us all about the same RFP, and we're like, okay, well, this is interesting. And so, you know, we helped various companies to navigate that RFP process. We gave them information, we gave them demos. There was one standout company that really engaged us. So they brought us in, they had us talk to their customer during the whole RFP process. We did presentations for their customer, and we were really more like a partner. They just brought us in really close, and they ended up winning the business. So a little bit of humor there. And number 3, our customer won the business. None of them were customers to start with, but one of them won it. So that's kind of the situation, is that this insurance company went out. And one of the things that was in the RFP, which we loved, obviously, is that one of the requirements was that they use the Racami dashboard. So the service provider that the insurance company was currently using had a Racami technology and was letting their insurance customer use the dashboard. And so they were logging in every day, this insurance company, checking statuses of jobs, running reports on delivery of mail, and looking at old documents that you know, were printed 6 months ago for various reasons, doing reprinting requests, and also drawing from that technology to deliver documents over the web through the insurance portal. So the insured members could go to the insurance company's website, retrieve documents that would come from this service provider's systems. So we were excited about that because you know, why wouldn't you want to be mandated in an RFP? And so what happened was our customer won the bid, and we got into this relationship between us, our customer, and the insurance company that was critical to the success of this particular project. Now, you may have heard us in previous conversations and webinars, maybe you've talked to some of our customers. Some of these projects for end-to-end job tracking, dashboarding, workflow automation can be long, right? They can be a year, they can be 18 months in some cases, depending on the complexity. What we did here in 4 months was 12 months. So you'll see that here. The incumbent was letting go of that work, and Racami's customer was taking it on. That gap that person is jumping over now is a 4-month gap. We had 4 months to do all this work because the incumbent said, you know, time's up, and we want you to find another vendor. And so that's what went down. And I just took this screenshot. Sorry, Peter, if you're still on. You don't look too flattering there, but I thought that was interesting when Peter was talking earlier. This is very similar to this screen I just showed you, where you have your circumstance on the left and your outcome on the right and the progress in the middle. And so there's a bunch of work to be done, the tasks at hand, and we're trying to get the customer from from point A to point B. And there was a lot of focus on the process, but because we had been there, done that, the process was already well understood, established, and it was one of the keys to allowing this project to happen in 4 months. Okay, so what are the details on that? Well, we're looking at basically 4 areas of migration and integration. On the right-hand side is our customer, and all of the orange boxes are things that they didn't really have in place yet. So, for example, the left-hand side is the incumbent. There were 5 years and 30 million documents inside of that archive for the insurance company. We had to take that and migrate it over to our customers' servers using the Racami software. So inside the Racami archive, there's inside the Racami system, there's a document archive, and we had to move that over. So you can imagine moving something from an existing archive with indexes that are different, with the storage techniques, the software programs that they use, very different than what the new provider is going to use. Then there was some tasks, some work to be done. Composition was another thing that needed to be handled, and our customer didn't have the proper composition software that they needed to handle this high volume of work. So they went out and bought it. But it's, there's a learning curve. It's complicated software. It's very powerful for composing personalized pieces, but they didn't have anybody on staff who knew how to use it, and it would take a while for them to get skill with that software. It's one thing to get training, it's another to develop skill. So what we did was we provided the staff. We, in addition to having software, we are an integrator and we know how to use a lot of other companies' products. So we provided the proper staff to set up the 30 job types inside the new composition software that our customer purchased. Now you think about 30 jobs, that's not that many, but each job had its own set of document templates embedded in it. So it was more like 100 document templates that had to be set up in a 4-month period. Workflow automation was another area that we helped set things up. So this is, there was a lot of talk earlier about automation, and the incumbent felt like they had proprietary stuff in the workflow that they created. So they didn't really want to share that with their competitor, and we just recreated it. So we went in and figured out what does our customer do now? What technologies do they have in place? How do they manage and track their work? And then we're going to create the automation around that in a context of their environment and how they do work. So we recreated all the workflows to process the jobs for the insurance company. And then the easiest part was the dashboard, because that's embedded in our Alchemy system. So all we did was turn that on. So you could think about some projects you've been involved in, either from document composition. One thing you don't see on here is postal processing. They bought a whole new postal processing suite of software. And so any one of those things, document composition, new postal processing software, rolling out a workflow system, rolling out a new document archive, just tremendous amount of work. And something that they were brave enough to take on, this customer of ours, so that they could win this account. So we helped them with all of that, and I showed you this slide earlier. So this is significant because it's just the proof that technology and the right partnerships can get you where you want to go. At the end of those 4 months, the insurance company had an ice cream party. So they called up their customer and they said, hey, we're all in the conference room, the team is here, and we want to thank you guys because the project went amazing. There was one issue with a barcode on a piece, and other than that, there were no problems in the rollout, and they were just super, super happy. They sent our customer some gifts. They sent us gifts. So we're not even directly related to the insurance company, and they sent us gifts because we participated so heavily in the process. It really was a collaboration. The communication had to be on point, and so we all came together as one, these 3 different entities, to make this happen. So it went so well that our customer started to get more work from the insurance company. So the single line of business is what went to RFP. After that word got out, the other lines of business said, okay, we want to send our work to that company also. So they took on additional lines of business, additional jobs. You see 78,000 jobs. This was in July of 2019. 11.7 million pieces of mail, representing 71 million images. And over an annualized total, they were at about 120 million images being produced. They're still now getting more work from this insurance company. So imagine a small investment in software, a small investment in people, and they were able to grow their business dramatically. So the keys to this, as I look back on it and figure out, what was it that made this so successful? We've been involved in a lot of projects. This one just went really well. It was like the perfect storm of teamwork, of technology being in the right place at the right time, the right applications for that technology. And so these are the 5 things that I've identified as keys to making this project successful. Hopefully this will help you as you look at your projects, how to apply technology. It's sometimes hard because vendors use the same words. They say the same things, especially vendors that might compete or overlap a little bit. Maybe they're not total competitors, but they might use the same phrasing and tell you the same things. It'd be difficult to know what's really the right tool, the right team to bring to the table. And so hopefully this will help you with some of those discussions and decisions you make with your vendors. But the proper amount of experience was key here. We had already been through archive migrations. We knew about workflows. We've laid hands on the document processing technology, the postal processing and the composition software. And we knew what to do, in what order, and who to put on it. And that's not only us. When I say we, I'm talking about Racami, our customer, and their customer. We all knew what to do, and we agreed on the sequencing of steps and the order and having the right people assigned to the project. We had to have dedicated resources. I'll jump ahead to number 3, because in order to do it so fast, we had to have people focused on the project. Right? So if you want to get something done fast, you have to dedicate their resources. Number 2, back to number 2, awareness and skill with industry technology. So there was no real learning going on. We didn't have time to go through a learning curve to get this done in 4 months. So having the right skill set on this project was key to meeting the goals. Number 4 is the parties acted as one. As I said before, this really was a great collaboration. You've heard the panelists talk earlier. Several people said in the post-COVID world, or in the COVID world we're in now, that people are working remotely. We've got to figure out how to communicate well, and that's gasoline for projects, right? People have to be on the same page. They have to act as one and keep the goal in mind so they're not going astray on different tangents. And in this particular project, that happened. We all worked together, and we had a direct line of communication to our customer's customer. They trusted us enough to talk directly to their customer without them being involved in a lot of cases. So this trust between all the parties was really important. And then skillful project management. This is 12 months worth of work in 4 months, and keeping it organized, making sure we were meeting the deadlines, everybody was on task, was critical to making all this happen. So that's the case study. This is published on our website. The details of it you can read in this pamphlet here. So if you go to racami.com and you go to the resources menu, then you can download this. There's lots of other case studies and various things out there that might be useful to you. So if this was interesting, you'd like to read the details, it'll be in this booklet. Okay, Mark, I think we can open it up for some Q&A. If there's any other questions for the panel or for me or for Peter, we're open to answering those questions here now.
No, there's no real questions at this time, and that was a very powerful case study, Matt, especially those steps you pointed out in the execution part. That seemed to really bring it all together, whether you're an in-plant or a service provider.
Yeah, execution is key, right? There's lots of good ideas, lots of pie in the sky, but when it comes down to getting the work done, you've got to have the right people on the right projects with the right technology, and when it all comes together, you get a story like this.
And I don't think we could also underemphasize the importance of ice cream to celebrate every step of an event.
True, very true.
Great. Well, thank you again, Matt, and thank you to all the speakers and panelists today. You've made this a great event. Thank you to Racami for sponsoring the event, and most of all, thank you to our attendees. You should expect an email in the next few days with a link to the recordings and the handouts. In the meanwhile, if you need any additional information, please visit racami.com. Have a great day, everyone.